The encounter. The Royal Crest Hotel stood as a symbol of grandeur in the city, a place where polished marble floors reflected soft golden lights and crystal chandeliers swayed gently in the breeze of air conditioning vents. It was a cool autumn evening, and the hotel's lobby buzzed with quiet elegance. Guests dressed in their finest attire exchanged pleasantries, their voices low and composed, while the scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air. Marissa, a young receptionist with an air of meticulous professionalism, stood behind the front desk. Her auburn hair was neatly tied into a bun, and her sharp blue eyes scanned the room with precision. She prided herself on maintaining the hotel's exclusive atmosphere. As she organized the evening's reservation lists, she glanced occasionally at the lobby, ensuring every guest met her expectations of refinement. The glass doors of the lobby slid open, letting in a gust of cold air. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped inside. His imposing frame was accentuated by a simple hoodie and jeans, and he carried a small duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His face, warm and friendly, bore traces of exhaustion, as if he had traveled far. His demeanor was calm yet magnetic, and as he approached the desk, his deep voice resonated in the quiet space. "Good evening," he said, offering a polite nod. "I'd like a room for the night." Marissa looked up, startled by his presence. Her professional smile tightened into something polite yet reserved. She took in his attire, the casualness of his outfit contrasting starkly with the opulence of their usual clientele. For a moment, she hesitated, her eyes flickering to the list of available rooms. There were plenty. In fact, the hotel was unusually quiet that evening. But a voice in her mind whispered caution, a prejudice she had never examined but had long lived with. To her, he did not fit the mold of a typical guest. With a measured breath, she offered an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry," she said smoothly, "but we're fully booked tonight." The man's brow furrowed slightly, though his expression remained composed. His dark eyes flickered to the nearly empty lobby, where unoccupied chairs and tables stood as silent witnesses to her claim. "Are you certain?" he asked, his tone patient but probing. "I'm happy to pay any rate." Marissa's posture stiffened. Folding her arms across her chest, she shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir," she repeated. "Perhaps you could try elsewhere." At that moment, the glass doors slid open again, admitting a well-dressed couple. Marissa's demeanor transformed instantly. Her smile turned warm, almost radiant, and her tone was welcoming as she greeted the couple. Within moments, she handed them a room key with cheerful efficiency. The contrast was stark. The tall man watched the interaction in silence, disappointment flickering across his face. He had seen this before. The subtle shifts in tone, the polite yet firm exclusion that carried an undeniable sting. He nodded to himself, suppressing a surge of frustration. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice steady. He turned and walked out into the crisp night air. The city lights reflected off the pavement as he stood for a moment, his breath visible in the cool breeze. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, though it held no humor. This was not new to him. Prejudice, cloaked in civility, had been a companion throughout his life. But tonight, something about the encounter felt different. It was not merely an insult. It was a call to action. The man was not just anyone. He was Shaquille "Big Shaq" Anderson, a retired basketball legend whose name resonated worldwide. With a towering presence on and off the court, he had built a legacy not just in sports, but as a successful entrepreneur. He owned restaurants, gyms, and even a chain of luxury apartments. The Royal Crest Hotel had been on his radar for some time, a potential investment opportunity he had considered. Now the decision was clear. As he walked down the quiet street, his mind worked swiftly. He pulled out his phone and began making calls. His financial advisor picked up on the second ring, and their conversation was brief but decisive. The hotel's parent company had been struggling, and acquiring the property outright was within his means. By the time Shaq reached his private residence, the wheels were already in motion. That night, as the city slept, Shaq sat in his study, poring over reports and contracts. He was no stranger to hard work, and this time his efforts carried a deeper purpose. The sting of rejection had ignited a determination not just to own but to transform, to create a space where everyone, regardless of their background or appearance, felt welcome. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight illuminated the city skyline. A notification pinged on Shaq's phone, confirming the purchase. The Royal Crest Hotel now belonged to him. Sipping his morning coffee, Shaq allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This was only the beginning. The real work lay ahead, and he was ready for it. The return. Shaquille Big Shaq Anderson sat in the back of his sleek black SUV, its tinted windows shielding him from the curious eyes of passersby. The city hummed with life outside, bustling sidewalks, honking cars, and the scent of freshly baked goods from corner bakeries mingling with the crisp autumn air. Inside the car, Shaq was silent, a contrast to the flurry of activity outside. His tailored suit, cut to perfection, emphasized his imposing figure. In his hands was a leather-bound folder containing details of his newest acquisition, the Royal Crest Hotel. The events of the previous evening replayed in his mind, not with bitterness but with a sense of purpose. He had spent the morning finalizing the legalities of the deal, signing papers that made him the sole owner of the very establishment that had turned him away. Now he was heading back, not as a guest, but as the owner. The SUV pulled up to the hotel's grand entrance. Its marble steps gleamed under the soft glow of decorative lanterns, a picture of opulence. Shaq stepped out, and for a moment, the staff milling about the lobby caught sight of him through the glass doors. Conversations paused, movement slowed. A ripple of recognition spread across their faces. Some recalled the tall man in casual attire from the previous night. Others knew him as the sports icon who had graced countless magazine covers and television screens. Shaq pushed the doors open and walked in with the confidence of a man who owned the ground he stood on. Heads turned as he made his way to the front desk, his strides deliberate. Behind the counter, Marissa froze. Her heart sank as she recognized him. Dressed impeccably in his suit, he was almost unrecognizable from the weary traveler she had dismissed. A flush of embarrassment crept up her neck, though she masked it with a professional smile. "Good afternoon, sir," she began, her voice slightly trembling. "Welcome back to the Royal Crest. How may I assist you today?" Shaq placed his hands on the counter, leaning in slightly. His dark eyes held hers, unblinking but not unkind. "Good afternoon," he said, his deep voice calm. "I believe I have an appointment with your manager." Marissa's relief was almost palpable. This was her chance to redirect the interaction. She reached for the phone to call Mr. Coleman, the hotel's manager. As she spoke, her voice regained its usual composure. "Mr. Coleman will be right out, sir." Within moments, a balding man in a crisp navy suit appeared, his expression one of mild confusion. "Good afternoon, sir," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Edward Coleman, the general manager here. How can I help you today?" Shaq shook his hand firmly, his grip strong but measured. "Good to meet you, Mr. Coleman," he said. "Let's step into your office. We have some important matters to discuss." The manager nodded, his curiosity piqued. As they disappeared down a hallway leading to the administrative offices, whispers erupted among the staff. Marissa stood rooted to her spot, her mind racing. The air buzzed with speculation, but no one could have guessed the truth. Inside the office, Shaq took a seat across from Mr. Coleman, the leather chair creaking slightly under his weight. He placed the folder on the desk between them and opened it, revealing a stack of documents bearing the hotel's name. "I'll get straight to the point," Shaq began. "As of this morning, I am the new owner of the Royal Crest Hotel." Coleman blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I wasn't informed of any ownership changes," he stammered. "This must be a mistake." "It's no mistake," Shaq interrupted, his voice steady but firm. "Here are the official documents. The sale was finalized at 9 o'clock a.m. today. The Royal Crest is now part of my portfolio." The manager scanned the papers, his hands trembling slightly. The signatures, the seals, the details. It was all there. He swallowed hard, realizing the gravity of the situation. I see," he said finally, setting the papers down. "Congratulations on your acquisition, Mr. Anderson." Shaq leaned back in his chair, studying the man before him. Coleman seemed competent, his nervousness understandable given the circumstances. "Thank you," Shaq said. "Now, let's talk about what happens next." For the next hour, Shaq outlined his vision for the hotel. He spoke about inclusivity, about creating a space where every guest felt valued and welcome. He highlighted areas for improvement in customer service, marketing strategies to attract a diverse clientele, and plans for staff training to ensure the highest standards of hospitality. Coleman listened intently, nodding at intervals. The conversation shifted to the team. "I've reviewed the staff files," Shaq said. "You have some excellent people here. But there are areas where we need to do better." Coleman hesitated before speaking. "Mr. Anderson, may I ask why you chose to invest in the Royal Crest?" Shaq's expression softened. "Last night, I came here as a guest, and I was turned away. I experienced firsthand what it feels like to be judged unfairly. This isn't just about business for me. It's personal. I want this hotel to stand for something better." The manager nodded slowly, the weight of Shaq's words sinking in. "Understood, sir. I'll ensure that the team aligns with your vision." Shaq stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "Good," he said. "I'll address the staff tomorrow. In the meantime, let's get to work." As Shaq exited the office and made his way back to the lobby, the atmosphere shifted. His presence, now framed by his newfound authority, commanded respect. Marissa's heart pounded as he approached the front desk once more. "Marissa, right?" Shaq said, his tone neutral. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll see you at tomorrow's staff meeting," he said simply, before turning and walking out. She watched him leave, her mind a whirlwind of emotions, shame, regret, and a flicker of admiration. What she didn't realize was that this was only the beginning of a transformation that would change not just the hotel, but everyone who worked within its walls. A new chapter begins. The next morning, the Royal Crest Hotel buzzed with an energy unlike any it had felt before. Staff members moved briskly through the hallways, whispering about the sudden ownership change. Rumors swirled about the tall man in the tailored suit who had arrived the previous day. Some recognized him as a global sports icon, while others were oblivious to his fame, but keenly aware of the authority he now wielded. Marissa sat at the front desk, her usual confidence replaced by unease. She replayed the events of the past 2 days in her mind, the sting of shame from her behavior refusing to fade. She glanced at the clock nervously. The staff meeting called by the new owner was set to begin in 15 minutes. She had no idea what to expect, but the thought of facing him again made her stomach churn. In the grand ballroom, where the morning meeting was set to take place, the staff trickled in, exchanging curious glances. The room, typically reserved for high-profile events, was now filled with hotel employees, housekeepers, chefs, bellhops, and receptionists, all dressed in their uniforms. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the doors opened, and Shaq entered. He moved with a quiet confidence, his towering presence silencing the murmurs. Dressed in another impeccably tailored suit, he carried an air of authority that commanded attention. Behind him, Edward Coleman, the general manager, followed with a clipboard in hand, looking both nervous and resolute. Shaq stepped up to the podium at the front of the room. He scanned the faces before him, taking in the mix of curiosity, apprehension, and respect. Clearing his throat, he began. "Good morning," he said, his deep voice resonating through the room. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shaquille Anderson. You might recognize me from my career in basketball. But today, I'm here as the new owner of the Royal Crest Hotel." A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Even those who had suspected his identity were taken aback by his directness. Shaq allowed a moment for the murmurs to subside before continuing. I want to start by saying this. I didn't buy this hotel just to add another property to my portfolio. I bought it because I see potential here, potential for greatness. But achieving that greatness means we have to make some changes. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Yesterday, I had an experience that no guest should ever have. I came here looking for a room, and I was turned away. Not because there weren't rooms available, but because I didn't fit someone's idea of what a guest should look like. Marissa's face burned with embarrassment. She stared at the floor, wishing she could disappear. Shaq continued, his tone steady but firm. Let me be clear. That kind of judgment has no place in this hotel. The Royal Crest will be a place where everyone feels welcome, regardless of how they look, where they come from, or what they're wearing. We're going to redefine what luxury hospitality means. A few employees nodded, their expressions thoughtful. Others exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of where this was headed. To make this happen, Shaq said, we'll be implementing new training programs focused on customer service, cultural sensitivity, and inclusivity. These aren't just buzzwords. They're values we're going to live by. Every guest who walks through those doors will be treated with respect and dignity. That's non-negotiable. He gestured to Coleman, who stepped forward with a stack of papers. Starting next week, we'll roll out these training sessions. Attendance is mandatory for all staff, from management to housekeeping. If you have any questions or concerns, my office door is always open. Shaq turned his attention back to the group. I also want to hear from you. You're the ones who make this hotel run. If there are things you think we can do better, I want to know. My goal is to create an environment where not just the guests, but also the staff, feel valued. He paused, letting his words sink in. Then, with a slight smile, he added, and don't worry, I'm not here to micromanage. Coleman is still your general manager, and he'll be the one implementing these changes on a day-to-day basis. But know this, I'll be checking in, and I expect results. After the meeting, the staff filed out of the ballroom, their conversations animated. Some were excited by the prospect of change, while others felt skeptical. Marissa, however, lingered in her seat, unable to shake the weight of Shaq's words. She had never thought of herself as prejudiced, but the previous night's events had forced her to confront a part of herself she didn't like. As the room emptied, Shaq approached her. She stiffened, bracing for what she feared would be a harsh reprimand. Marissa, he said, his tone calm but serious. I want to talk to you. She stood, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. Yes, Mr. Anderson. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he said, Yesterday, you made a mistake. But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to challenge you to be better. Marissa blinked, taken aback. I understand, she stammered. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. I believe you are, Shaq replied. And I also believe people can change. Use this as an opportunity to reflect, to grow. Everyone deserves a second chance. Just make sure you don't waste it. She nodded, gratitude welling up inside her. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I won't let you down. I hope not, he said with a faint smile. Now, get back to work. We've got a lot to do. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of activity. Shaq toured the hotel, meeting employees from every department and asking thoughtful questions about their roles. His genuine interest in their work surprised many, earning him respect even from those who had been skeptical. By evening, the hotel seemed to hum with a renewed sense of purpose. Staff members who had once felt disconnected now found themselves invested in the new vision. And while the changes wouldn't happen overnight, a new chapter had undeniably begun for the Royal Crest Hotel. As Shaq left the building that night, he glanced back at the gleaming facade, a small smile playing on his lips. This was just the beginning, and he was ready for the journey ahead. The transformation. In the days following Shaquille Anderson's meeting with the staff, the Royal Crest Hotel began to transform, not just physically, but in spirit. The buzz of change filled the air, an energy that invigorated some employees and unsettled others. Shaq's vision of inclusivity, excellence, and fairness was ambitious, and while many embraced it, a few clung to old ways, wary of the shift in dynamics. Redefining leadership. Shaq made frequent visits to the hotel, not to loom over the staff, but to lead by example. He wasn't interested in simply being a distant owner. He wanted to be hands-on, visible, and approachable. On one such day, Shaq walked into the kitchen unannounced. The scent of simmering sauces and freshly baked bread filled the air as chefs bustled about, their movements swift and precise. "Who's in charge here?" Shaq asked, his booming voice cutting through the clatter of pots and pans. The head chef, a stern-looking woman named Angela, stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "That would be me, Mr. Anderson," she said with a hint of pride. "Angela Torres, executive chef." Shaq extended a hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Angela. I hear the food here is top-notch." Angela shook his hand, her grip firm. "We aim to please," she said, though her tone carried a note of skepticism. "Well," Shaq said with a grin, "how about we raise the bar? I want the Royal Crest to be known for its culinary excellence. Let's talk about how we can make that happen." Over the next hour, Shaq and Angela brainstormed ideas. They discussed expanding the menu to include dishes inspired by diverse cuisines, introducing seasonal farm-to-table specials, and even hosting cooking workshops for guests. Angela, initially wary, found herself inspired by Shaq's enthusiasm and commitment to quality. By the end of their conversation, she was not only on board but eager to lead the charge in redefining the hotel's dining experience. "You've got a deal, Mr. Anderson," she said, her eyes alight with determination. "Let's make this kitchen the heartbeat of the Royal Crest." Rewriting the rules. Meanwhile, Marissa grappled with her own transformation. Shaq's words had left a profound impact on her, and she resolved to change. She volunteered to lead the first cultural sensitivity training session, hoping to set an example for her colleagues. The training, held in the hotel's conference room, was led by a professional facilitator. The session began with an exercise where staff members were asked to share an instance when they had felt judged or excluded. The room was quiet at first, but soon stories began to emerge. Stories of struggles, assumptions, and quiet moments of triumph. Marissa hesitated, then raised her hand. When the facilitator called on her, she took a deep breath. "I want to share something I'm not proud of," she began, her voice trembling. "Last week, I turned away a guest. I didn't judge him for the right reasons. I judged him for all the wrong ones." All eyes turned to her, but instead of hostility, she saw understanding. "That guest was Mr. Anderson," she continued. "I made a mistake, a big one, but I'm here because I want to do better. And I think we all have room to grow." Her confession set the tone for the rest of the session. Employees who had been skeptical about the training opened up, and by the end, the room was filled with a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. Physical changes. As the staff underwent their transformation, so too did the hotel itself. Shaq spared no expense in upgrading the facilities. The lobby, once coldly opulent, was redesigned to feel warm and inviting. Plush seating areas were added, along with artwork by local artists to celebrate the city's culture. In the guest rooms, the changes were even more dramatic. Each room was equipped with state-of-the-art amenities, but it was the small touches, a handwritten welcome note, a basket of locally sourced treats that made the biggest impression on guests. Shaq also invested in the staff areas, an often overlooked part of the hospitality industry. The break room was refurbished with comfortable seating, a fully stocked coffee bar, and even a small library filled with books on personal development and hospitality excellence. We can't expect our staff to take care of our guests if we don't take care of them, Shaq explained during one of his meetings with Coleman. Winning over the skeptics. Not everyone embraced the changes right away. Some employees, particularly those who had been with the hotel for decades, viewed Shaq's ideas as unnecessary or overly idealistic. Among them was Gerald, the head concierge, who prided himself on his old-school approach to customer service. One afternoon, Shaq approached Gerald at the concierge desk. "Got a minute?" he asked. Gerald looked up from his neatly organized counter. "Of course, Mr. Anderson. I hear you're the best concierge in the city," Shaq said, leaning casually against the desk. Gerald's chest puffed slightly. "I do my best, sir." "Good," Shaq said. "Because I need your help." Gerald raised an eyebrow. "My help?" "Yeah," Shaq said. "I want to create an experience for our guests that they'll never forget. You've been here the longest. You know this place inside and out. I need your insights." The unexpected praise caught Gerald off guard. Over the next hour, the two men discussed ways to enhance the guest experience, from personalized itineraries to partnerships with local businesses. By the end of the conversation, Gerald's skepticism had melted away, replaced by a sense of pride in being part of something bigger. The guests take notice. As the weeks passed, word of the Royal Crest's transformation began to spread. Guests who had stayed at the hotel before marveled at the changes, while new visitors were drawn by glowing reviews. One evening, a family checked in, parents with two young children in tow. They were greeted by Marissa, who now wore a genuine smile that reflected her newfound passion for her work. She knelt to speak to the children at eye level, offering them small stuffed animals as welcome gifts. The parents beamed, clearly touched by the gesture. As the family headed to their room, the father turned back and said, "This is the best welcome we've ever had." "Thank you." Marissa's heart swelled with pride. For the first time in her career, she understood the true meaning of hospitality. Shaq's legacy. On a crisp autumn evening, exactly 1 month after Shaq had first walked into the Royal Crest, he stood outside the hotel, looking up at its illuminated facade. It was the same building, yet it felt entirely different, a testament to the power of vision and determination. Inside, the staff worked seamlessly, their movements driven by a shared commitment to excellence. Guests laughed and chatted in the lobby, their smiles genuine. The Royal Crest was no longer just a luxury hotel. It was a symbol of transformation, a place where everyone felt they belonged. And for Shaq, that was the greatest victory of all. Challenges emerge. Despite the strides made in the transformation of the Royal Crest Hotel, challenges were inevitable. Change, no matter how positive, always brings resistance and growing pains. As the hotel adapted to Shaquille Anderson's vision, cracks began to appear, not in the vision itself, but in the adjustment process. Shaq knew this was normal. Success was never a straight road. But it was in these moments that true leadership would be tested. The pushback. Not everyone on the staff was thrilled about the new direction. Some employees, particularly those who had worked at the hotel for decades, felt alienated by the changes. For Gerald, the once reluctant head concierge, Shaq's hands-on approach had won him over. But for others like Linda, the senior event coordinator, the new rules felt like an erosion of tradition. "I've been running events at this hotel for 20 years, Linda complained during a staff meeting, "and we've always catered to a certain clientele. Now you're telling me to open the ballroom for some community art exhibit. What's next? A bake sale in the lobby?" A ripple of uneasy laughter spread through the room, but Shaq remained calm. He looked directly at Linda and said, "I get it. Change is hard, especially when you've been doing something for a long time. But let me ask you this. Do you believe we can afford to stay the same in a world that's constantly evolving?" Linda hesitated, her defensiveness wavering under Shaq's steady gaze. "I guess not," she admitted grudgingly. "But it feels like we're throwing away what made this place special." Shaq nodded. What made this place special was the people, the team, the guests, the experiences. We're not throwing that away. We're building on it, making it stronger. But to do that, we have to be open to new ideas. Can I count on you to help us move forward? Linda sighed but nodded. Yes, Mr. Anderson. I'll give it a shot. Good, Shaq said with a smile. And who knows, that community art exhibit might just surprise you. The renovation hurdle. While staff adjustments were one challenge, the physical renovations presented another. As Shaq's team worked to modernize the hotel, unexpected obstacles arose. Contractors discovered structural issues in some of the older wings, and repairs would be costly. The timeline for completion began to stretch, frustrating both the staff and guests. One particularly tense day, Shaq found himself in a heated discussion with the project manager, a no-nonsense woman named Carla. Mr. Anderson, I appreciate your vision, Carla said, arms crossed. But if you want this done right, it's going to take more time and more money. Shaq rubbed his temples, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. Carla, I didn't hire you to rush. I hired you because you're the best. If you say it'll take more time, I trust you. But I need you to trust me too. Let's keep the staff and guests informed about what's happening. Transparency is key. Carla softened, impressed by Shaq's composure. Fair enough, she said. I'll draft a detailed update for you to share with everyone. Shaq smiled. That's all I ask. Let's make it happen. Winning over the community. One of Shaq's most ambitious goals for the Royal Crest was to make it a cornerstone of the local community. He envisioned the hotel not just as a place for luxury stays, but as a space where locals felt welcome. To this end, he partnered with local businesses, artists, and charities to host events that bridged the gap between the elite clientele and the city's residents. The first major event under this new initiative was a charity gala benefiting local youth programs. Shaq himself spearheaded the planning, ensuring it would be a night to remember. The ballroom was transformed into a breathtaking venue, adorned with floral arrangements, string lights, and art pieces created by local students. The evening was a resounding success. Guests included not only the city's affluent residents, but also families and young people who had never set foot in the Royal Crest before. Shaq spent the evening mingling, his approachable demeanor breaking down barriers. He even took the stage for an impromptu auction, using his charisma to raise tens of thousands of dollars for the cause. But the true highlight of the night came when Shaq invited a group of local high school basketball players onto the stage. This hotel is more than just a building, he said, his voice carrying through the room. It's a symbol of opportunity and possibility. And these kids here, they're the future. Let's invest in them. The applause was thunderous, and Shaq's words resonated deeply with everyone in attendance. Staff morale wavers. As the renovations dragged on and the pace of change intensified, staff morale began to waver. Even the most enthusiastic employees felt the strain of balancing their usual duties with the demands of the transformation. Shaq, always attuned to his team's needs, decided it was time for a morale boost. He organized a surprise staff appreciation day. The hotel's rooftop terrace, typically reserved for private events, was transformed into a festive space, complete with music, games, and a lavish buffet. Shaq himself manned the grill, flipping burgers and joking with employees as they lined up for food. During the event, Shaq gave a short speech. I know this hasn't been easy, he said, his voice sincere. But I want you all to know how much I appreciate your hard work and dedication. This hotel isn't just mine. It's ours. Together, we're building something incredible. The gesture had an immediate impact. Employees left the event feeling reinvigorated, their sense of camaraderie stronger than ever. The first test. The ultimate test of the Royal Crest's transformation came when a high-profile guest checked in, a world-renowned musician in town for a concert. In the past, such guests had often been handled with excessive formality, creating a distance between them and the staff. But under Shaq's new ethos, the approach was different. Marissa, now fully embracing her role as a welcoming and inclusive front desk supervisor, greeted the musician with the same warmth she would extend to any guest. "Welcome to the Royal Crest," she said with a genuine smile. "We're honored to have you with us. If there's anything you need during your stay, just let us know." The musician, initially reserved, was charmed by the relaxed yet professional atmosphere. Over the course of his stay, he praised the hotel's transformation, noting how it felt like a place where luxury and humanity coexisted. His glowing review, shared with his millions of followers on social media, solidified the Royal Crest's new reputation as a hotel that stood for more than just opulence. It was a place of heart, character, and inclusivity. By the end of the month, the Royal Crest Hotel was well on its way to becoming a landmark not just for its luxury but for its values. And while challenges still lay ahead, Shaq knew one thing for certain: the foundation they were building was unshakable.